1 in 5 children will be sexually solicited before they turn 18 in this country. And then internationally, every 30 seconds, a child is stolen, either for sex, for slave labor, or for organ harvesting. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if every 30 seconds a child contracted a severe case of COVID or died from COVID? Or if 1 in 5 kids was getting COVID right now? Can you imagine the outrage? And it's not happening, but it is happening with child exploitation. So where's the noise? My name is Tim Ballard. I spent 12 years as a special agent and undercover operator working to combat child trafficking and child exploitation. And I'm currently the CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit to eradicate child slavery, and also the Nazarene Fund, which does the same in the Middle East.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a lot of very important work right now that you're doing, so thank you for taking the time to be here.
It's an honor to be here.
Dealing with human trafficking, I think it's something that a lot of people they've completely forgot about now with the coronavirus and these riots and everything going on. What has been the impact of the lockdown on human trafficking right now in America?
It's been a tsunami of child exploitation during the pandemic, during this shutdown. Why? Because what happens is, first of all, the United States, we're the #1 consumers of child sex material, child exploitation material in the world. So understand, it's all here. The demand, these pedophiles, and they love the lockdown because all the societal infrastructure that keeps kids safe, schools, after school programs, sports, music lessons, etc., those are gone. Those are shut down. And the kids instead are told, sit here, here's a laptop, here's your smartphone, do your schoolwork, hang out here, while mom and dad are scavenging for food and supplies and trying to save their jobs. And these kids are stuck there. The pedophiles, likewise, are jobless. And they have their laptops and smartphones, and they know how to access those kids through online gaming, Facebook, whatever. We've actually been able to monitor the chatting that's going on at the dark net. And basically the pedophiles are saying, hey, this is our dream. It's harvest time. And so these kids are now sitting ducks. And we already have the reports, and the reports are just grotesque and horrific. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has reported that in March, there were 2 million reports of crimes against children in the United States. That's 2 times what it was in April 2019. It got even worse in April. In April, 4 million reports, a 4-fold increase from what we saw in March 2019. 1 in 5 children will be sexually solicited before they turn 18 in this country. And then internationally, every 30 seconds, a child is stolen, either for sex, for slave labor, or for organ harvesting. So those are the numbers, those are the actual numbers. And so it's in the millions when you accumulate them all. But proportionate to what we're talking about with COVID, for example. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if every 30 seconds a child contracted a severe case of COVID or died from COVID? Or if 1 in 5 kids was getting COVID right now? Can you imagine the outrage? And it's not happening, but it is happening with child exploitation. So where's the noise? Why can't we get loud about this? The pedophiles they've put their lines out. We won't even know the consequences for years to come, what happens, but they've begun the grooming process, and these kids are seriously in the crosshairs of the pedophiles right now.
Have you seen any personal stories or anything that you've seen specifically during this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our guys right now are deployed. This is what we do. We're all in the United States and throughout the world. We're supporting law enforcement efforts, and we're helping them online. We're providing the resources. There was a case in my home state of Utah just a few weeks ago. This guy, Danny Hardman, he was gaming online with 6-year-old girls, and he actually convinced 2 of these 6-year-old girls to send them naked pictures of themselves. And these kids, again, the parents didn't know what was going on. A lot of parents don't understand that just because their kids are playing a game online, they don't understand that there's a mechanism for pedophiles to access them. They'll pretend to be something else. They'll pretend to be the same age as those kids. And in fact, they are slowly but surely grooming them, desensitizing them, and then eventually getting them to send pictures, send images. And I'll tell you what, they will try to find them eventually. They will take whatever time is required to find them, get their dirty hands on them, and then they become contact offenders and actually sexually assault these kids.
And it was the same thing with Glenn Beck as well that he was talking about.
Yeah, Glenn did an interview with me not long ago. where he talked about, look, Glenn is maybe the most socially aware person around. He has to be, right, for his job. And he has security everywhere, firewalls everywhere. He doesn't even let his kids have cell phones or access to the internet without major supervision. But he didn't know, like so many parents don't know, that certain games, like Fortnite and other games, that you're not just playing against a computer, you're playing against other people. And he was able, because he's smart and he's witty and he's in tune, he was able to find out that there was a guy who was accessing one of his children through a game. And it turned out the guy was a convict. I can't say more about the case other than that, but just to know that if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody.
There's just so much going on that I think parents just have no idea, which is a really scary thing. I mean, the technology develops so fast and all these new things that parents just can't keep up. Where are these cases happening the most across America, and why is it happening so much here?
We are the demand, unfortunately, right? So the highest number of child exploitation material lands here in this country, produced and consumed. The United States, we are in the top 3 for destination countries for traffickers wanting to get kids into our markets, which just tells you they are here. The pedophiles are here. When we work overseas, we're targeting the American travelers. Okay, so the demand is here, and they want to hurt our kids. And so what cities? I mean, it's huge in places like Phoenix, LA, Portland, Houston. I mean, almost any major city and anywhere in the United States. And our job at our foundation, Operation Underground Railroad, is to get resources into the hands of our law enforcement. And I'd say over 90% do not have the tools they need right now. Simply put, they just don't have what every single law enforcement agency should have to keep our kids safe.
What are some of those things that law enforcement doesn't have?
For example, digital forensic mobile labs. We build those and deliver those to law enforcement units. This allows them to process the evidence on site after they do a search warrant on a suspected pedophile. And so they can access the data immediately. They can forensically download it and have enough evidence to arrest the guy. If they can't, then it goes to a lab, and it could be months before they hear back, and they can't arrest the guy because the speedy trial clause will be invoked. And if they arrest him too soon, they won't have time to get the evidence for trial, and the guy will get off. So we provide those tools. We also provide digital forensic dogs. These are dogs that literally go in like a drug dog or a bomb dog, but they can sniff out the smallest piece of digital media. And that's where the pedophiles hide their evidence. They're going to sexually assault a child. They're going to keep that. They need it. It's their addiction. And so they'll take that and put it on a little hard drive or a little thumb drive. They'll hide it in their floorboards. They'll hide up in the curtains. And a human being likely won't ever find it. These dogs will go in, sniff it out, and find it. I'd say probably less than 3% of law enforcement in the United States have either of those tools. And so our job is to get those tools and other tools like that into their hands so they can protect our kids. This is not some peripheral issue. I fear a lot of people think it's peripheral or it happens far, far away. It's happening right here, and it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. This is it. I mean, we're dealing with, and we're not prepared.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we have these new technologies. I mean, the labs and the dogs that can smell that. I mean, that's an incredible thing. But, I mean, you said 90% of these law enforcement officers aren't prepared with this. And now we have these claims from lots of people shouting that we need to defund the police or, get police out of a lot of major cities right now. What effect will that have on human trafficking in this country?
So already we're under-sourced, and I don't know what these cries mean. I will say that what happened to George Floyd is grotesque and illegal, and more needs to be done to make sure those things do not happen. But my concern is as governments go ahead and try to whatever defund the police means or transform policing systems, I fear that the kids won't be at the table, right? That they won't consider the kids. Government certainly didn't consider the children during the COVID shutdown. There's things that could have been done that weren't done. And so here we are again with another crisis on our hands. And I want to hear a louder voice around the nation to say, whatever we decide to do, let's not negatively affect what is already a challenge. And that is making sure that there is a societal response, a law enforcement response to protect our children from the pedophile monsters who want to rape them. I don't think that's too much to ask, and I just don't think enough people are having that discussion right now.
I couldn't imagine being a cop, just getting slandered and everyone hating on everything that they're doing. It really is disincentivizing people from wanting to become police officers because of this whole scene. What do you see as the future for this?
Who wants to be a cop right now? I was just a few days ago, I was at a police unit. We're building a mobile lab for them, and these guys, I could see it. They were demoralized, and they just feel horrible. It's almost like they're supposed to be embarrassed or something. One of them, literally that day we visited them, had a bullet speed by their head, 5 inches from their head, almost died, protecting other people. I told them a story that I'd share here. I have 2 children that our organization liberated from child traffickers in Haiti. And we ended up adopting those 2 kids. And every time my son from Haiti sees a law enforcement officer, he runs. Doesn't just walk, he runs. And doesn't just hug, he jumps into their arms and just grabs them and holds them and says, I love you, I thank you, I want to be you. He wears his little police uniform everywhere he goes. Why? Because he knows that law enforcement saved his life. He was heading down a track where his life would have been just complete hell. He wants to be a cop right now. It is heroic what they do. I shared that story with them, and I lightened their day, and I just said thank you. By de-incentivizing people from being cops because it's a shameful profession now, again, we can't be short-sighted. Think what that means. If we can't recruit good cops, then we're going to get the bottom of the barrel, and the cycles are going to continue for the worse. We're going to get bad cops. Then, if we get so many bad cops or we shut down so much law enforcement, what's going to happen? People who can afford it are going to pay for private cops, private investigators, private security. And how's that going to fare for people who are impoverished, which is so many of people in our country who can't afford that. So we're just, the very people that we're claiming we're trying to help with all this, we're just going to hurt if we continue this anti-police cycle. Again, do more to get rid of the bad apples. They exist. Do more to do that. But elevate those good law enforcement who keep us all safe.
Yeah, I think it's really short-sighted thinking from a lot of these city councils and state governments just trying to defund the police, but not thinking about the real victims of it. They do it just because the mainstream media is telling them to do it and there's people protesting in the streets. You were law enforcement before as well. How do you see that the police who do commit bad acts or they act inappropriately, how should they be, I guess, prosecuted, or how should the police system be reformed?
I would like to see, frankly, I'd like to see more put into internal affairs to make sure that law enforcement is up to par and that you get the bad apples out, because they do exist. There's no question about it. I'd like to see more training up front. I think in some jurisdictions it might be too easy, frankly, to become a law enforcement officer. This is a very, very responsible job. You're given a gun and a badge, and I mean, you're going up against horrible players who are hurting kids and others. It should be, I think there could be more on the front end, but these things are requiring actually more funding, not less. So I hope that the governments, particularly local governments who are making these decisions for their local jurisdictions, I hope they're being very smart about what they're going to transform exactly. Just please, no, don't hurt the kids. They're already getting hurt enough. Just please remember, these kids are of every color and kind and age. This is the one issue, frankly, Will, that I think we can come around. I mean, I feel like we're in such a divisive situation where we can't agree on anything anymore. Anything. I think we're literally down to the last thing that we can all agree on, whether it's left or right or this party or that party. There's one thing left. That kids shouldn't be kidnapped, they shouldn't be raped, they shouldn't be trafficked. So let's use that thing right now and let's get outraged over that together. Wouldn't that be great? And we could prevent millions of kids from being taken, trafficked, and kidnapped and raped.
It seems really tough because even like the George Floyd murder with the cop, it seemed like everyone on the right and everyone on the left, I mean, they were in complete unison really on that it was a horrible thing. But then we still have these riots and protests, and it really got out of control really quickly. Again, with the reform, with the law enforcement, what do you think about the unions? I mean, we think about it with like teacher unions and these public sector unions where bad teachers can't really get fired. Is it similar with law enforcement?
It is. I mean, every jurisdiction is a little bit different how they do it, each state, each city. county and so forth. But I do think that more needs to go into internal affairs. And sometimes it's difficult to remove a bad apple, and barriers should be removed to the extent that if someone's bad, you got to get them out, because look what one bad cop can do. And again, because I'm always in child protection mode, because that's been my career. That's the first place I go. One bad apple does this. There's a societal reaction, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, these children, are they going to be hurt in this? Is anyone looking out for them? I mean, again, you go back to what's happened even before this crisis. We just had the other crisis, the COVID-19 crisis. And, when you consider the fact that the societal infrastructures that would have kept those kids safe, they are maintained and created by people who were probably 60 years or younger, right? I'd say 90% of the people that create the infrastructure that keep kids safe are 60 years and younger. And they have, according to CDC, according to so many experts right now, that group has a survivability rate of COVID of over 99%. So then you got to ask this question, right? The question is, what is scarier to you? A virus with a survivability rate of 99.9%? Or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of children, based on reports, I could say maybe millions of children being raped? What's a scarier equation? I don't think that was even looked at by city councils or by governors' offices when they were considering all of this. And I will say this: if you're 70 years or older, for sure you're in risk, and other vulnerable people. But you could take a fraction of the trillions of dollars that were spent to bail out our businesses, a fraction of that, and those most vulnerable, you could take really, really good care of them, 100%. And so I just go to the kids every time there's a crisis, because the kids can't organize. The kids can't riot. They can't march. They can't get loud. They have no voice. And so it's easy to forget them. But the first question we need to ask in every crisis is, where are the kids? What's happening to them? What can we do for them? They don't have a voice. We need to be their voice.
Yeah, well, they're not dying from the virus. And you shut down the summer camps and sports and activities and things. You're weakening their immune system. You're making it harder for them to go back and socialize. I can't imagine what it'd be like to raise children right now. I mean, it must be incredibly challenging. What can people watching this right now do to help the children that you are talking about?
The first responders that protect kids are your local law enforcement, your local sheriff's office. I wish that every family in this nation that has a child, they should find out what their local law enforcement already has or what they're doing to keep kids safe. And then get out in front of this. If it looks like they're going to transform law enforcement systems, and I hope that they can do it in a way that is positive, that we do make it a better system, that we do avoid these horrific things that have happened to George Floyd and others. I hope they can figure that out. That's a very important part. But we don't need to lose, we can do two things at once. We don't need to lose the protection of the kids. So I would ask every family, find out what your law enforcement, what tools they have. Do they have labs? Do they have the dogs? Do they have a pretty decent child crimes unit? And if they don't, go to the city council and make sure they know that. Make sure your voice is heard. So when they're transforming and defunding, whatever that means, make sure that's not defunded, but that is actually extra funded. And Operation Underground Railroad, that's what our expertise is. We will work with you. We will work with you to make sure the resources get into the proper hands, the law enforcement who will keep your kids safe.
And where can people find out more information on Operation Underground Railroad?
They can go to OURrescue.org and learn all about us and engage us, because we're here to be engaged and to make sure your kids are safe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you being here. I know it's a heavy topic to talk about, but I mean, again, it's something that is totally forgotten about and people aren't thinking, so we're really happy to have you here and get this information out here.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this video, learned something new, make sure you share with your friends, comment your thoughts down below, and we're going to see you in the next one. Thank you.